And so this is going to be a really, really important part of your debates and whatnot. How many of you watched a lab demo debate last night? Okay. Of those of you that watched a lab demo debate last night, how many of you watched a state's counterplan debate? Okay, great. You should keep that debate in mind, and if there were things about how people were debating that you didn't really talk about, or you woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and you were like, what does this mean? Then this is an opportunity, that doesn't happen to you. Then this is an opportunity for you to kind of fill in some of your thinking about the state's counterplan from both the affirmative and the negative perspective. How many of you have read through the state's file, that's the pre-institute file? Okay. Obviously you should like keep doing your own research and stuff, but I think that if you look through that, that'll also be helpful to you to kind of understand some of the stuff that Sarah's going to talk about. Okay, so give Sarah a round of applause. Okay, 2 seconds. All right, so while Josh is helping me, who here has ever debated the state's path plan? Yeah. In the mustache, what happened? Well, what are their states do? When was this? Last year. Which one before? Was it the withdrawal troops topic or whatever? So the state governments decided to take our troops out of camp. Okay, well, Pam, you remember.
So they were using the telescope app, and you said let the states make the telescope.
Okay. The states typically do. Okay, fine. States typically do space policy. Why not? In the front. Okay. It's hard for the states to communicate to get anything done, but what if just one state was really good at it? Like Texas? Is that someone saying? All right, so what if all of the states built a space shuttle? Yeah. There would be 50 space shuttles. And whose space shuttle might not work? At Oklahoma. That's right. Oklahoma. Right. New Jersey, right? There are lots of problems with having the states do big-scale military things. Josh is messing around with my computer. Okay. Well, what does the state do, or states? Let's actually first make a distinction. What is the state? Caleb. Who's in Caleb? What is the state? It's an oppressive. It's kind of more of a definition rather than a description.
That's awesome.
It's a government, right? What's the difference between the states and the state? In the front.
The state,
States are governments.
are talking either about multiple governments or like
50 states, okay? So when we say the statism K, that has little to do, well, it has a lot to do, 50 times more to do, I guess, with the state's counterplan, right? But the state is a general term that's applied to all governments, right? Whereas the states, okay, that's fine. God, Tracy. Okay, now, my lecture today is about states and federalism. I would like to start off by saying that this is the most timely lecture of all time.
yes.
Can anyone guess why that's the case?
Because you're awesome.
Because I'm awesome is true.
It's an hour long.
It's an hour long, no. Not Toby. Come on. The healthcare what? Ruling? What happened? It got upheld. Oh, okay, so wait. Let's back up. Who are the parties in the case? Who is suing whom? The South? Not exactly, not exactly. The states. Okay, what'd you say, Nashville? Is that Nashville? Who's the states? A group of states are suing the federal government because why were the states suing the federal government? They did not like the Obama health care plan because they thought it was the state's responsibility. Exactly. And the Supreme Court today said no. Mainly, it's a pretty complicated thing, but, and the full decision isn't out yet. It happened about 30 minutes ago. So, Josh is really upset about this healthcare decision that was taken in the state. So,
I'm going to talk about healthcare. So the states, Florida in particular, sued the federal government. All right? Why did they say? Because it was the state responsibility. So it was a 5-4 decision this morning. All right? Unexpected. Does anyone know what they ruled?
You should, because we talked about it.
I don't know any of your names, so just say something. Oh, they did rule it was constitutional, okay. Any more specificity than that? Yeah. Huh? They said the health, it was kind of interesting actually. The decision's 194 pages, I've only read the first 3 so far. But, I can give you the quick summary, all right? They didn't say that the federal government, remember this phrase, under the Commerce Clause, had the authority to require people to buy health care insurance. The individual mandate was the thing that was at question, all right, which required people to buy health insurance. What they did say, however, interestingly enough, was that the federal government had the right to tax people for not having health insurance. All right? Those are 2 things that Sarah's going to talk about in a second. There's the Commerce Clause, which says that the federal government may use its powers to regulate commerce between the states. And then there's an amendment to the Constitution, I don't remember which number, that says that they have tax authority, that they can levy taxes. The Commerce Clause is usually how federal authority is levied, all right? And it is almost assuredly how the federal government would be able to use some of its authority under transportation policy. But this time the court made a very interesting ruling, led on a very, very unusual 5-4 decision with Roberts on top and Kennedy on the bottom, all right? I mean, that's like, it's a rough opening to K. But like, saying that it wasn't Commerce Clause authority, but it was taxation authority that allowed the federal government to keep the individual mandate in place. Which could be really, really novel and interesting for your debates on the transportation topic here. Just use my picture. Okay, cool. I know, so just okay, you keep talking. Get it on. Yes,
Okay. So, Commerce Clause. Federal government can regulate commerce, right? Is that always the case? No. Who said no? Yeah, okay, so what happened? No, Chandler. Right. Right. Yeah. Okay, so what Chandler said is really good. Okay, so the states used to compete against each other economically, and they would have tariffs against each other, or they would have subsidies in their own states, right? The federal government wanted to preempt that, to say, hey, let's have one national economy, and that's what the Commerce Clause does. This is relevant to the transportation topic. Think about the Pipelines Act. I've been doing a little research on this. Why does, okay, well, the justification for the federal control over pipelines is that they're interstate commerce, right? They have to go between states, and states could have monopolies over certain pipelines, right? And they could outcompete the other states if the federal government didn't intervene and create a more fair and regulatory system. Does that make sense? Oh, okay. So, Commerce Clause authorizes the federal government to do certain things. What doesn't the Commerce Clause authorize the federal government to do about transportation? Who built the roads in Denton? Texas? Maybe. Private? No, not really. The county probably, maybe the city, right? Most transportation building is not done by the federal government. Keep that in mind. 99% of transportation infrastructure is not controlled by the federal government. Now we have rainbow. Most of the control and regulation of roads happens on a state and more often even on a local level. What does the federal government do? Think back to Brian's lecture. To help the states or local authorities with that. Toll roads? Well, kind of. States build toll roads too. Yeah, in front, Indians. No, Cleveland. Oh, I'm sorry. That was.
It's okay, it's called karma, right, Shrika?
The federal government helps to fund projects, right? You're gonna have to calm down, Joe. Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's karma, it's fine, it's really okay.
All right. Okay, so Josh and I took a road trip this summer. Well, a number of road trips. We drove from Iowa City to Philadelphia, then from Philadelphia to Sandusky, Ohio for Louie's wedding. And then we drove back to Iowa City, and then we drove to Houston, and then we drove here. Okay. The thing that was weird about this was toll roads, right? When we drove the first 2/3 of that journey, from Iowa City to Philadelphia, back to Iowa City, we had one toll pass. Okay? In Texas, how many different types of toll passes are there? Someone from Texas? 4, 5, right? Can you use those toll passes in other states? No. That's because Texas likes to do things its own way, right? But all of the states in the Northeast and the Midwest came together and formed a collaborative effort to create one single toll pass to rule them all. Okay? You can use this toll pass to park at LaGuardia Airport. You can use it to drive in Chicago. You can use the very same toll pass to go anywhere you want in Philadelphia without paying tolls. Well, you're paying the tolls, right? But that is a pretty good example of why or how the states control transportation infrastructure. Wouldn't we agree that toll roads are transportation infrastructure? Okay? So when the states don't work together, there are problems, right? So for instance, our Easy Pass, which was, pretty cool, did not work when we got to Texas. We had to go to the Easy Tag store, which is different than the Texas Tag store, which is different than the toll tag store, right? And get ourselves an Easy Tag to replace our Easy Pass. Sounds confusing, yes? This is what happens when you let the 50 states do things. Okay? But it's also good in some ways, right? Because do most people need the ability to drive from Texas to Philadelphia? No, right? And so Texas can probably do it a little more efficiently if they don't have to deal with Pennsylvania. Does that make sense? I've got it this way. But it would be somewhat better in some instances if, Josh, please don't just let the display go with that resolution. It's an arrangement. Go back. It doesn't happen here. All right. Okay. I'll keep talking about this. Who controls your driver's license? Who has a driver's license? Okay. Who controls that? The states. Why? Because they want to. Why do they want to?
Each state has different.
Oh, go either.
Okay, so each state has set their own laws on who can drive and regulations like that. Like in New Jersey, you can't drive until you're 18.
Right.
In Texas, you can get your permit when you're 15 to start driving. So since each state has different laws, the federal organizations can really regulate that. It's going to cause like 50 different conflicts.
It would cause 50 different conflicts. But shouldn't it maybe just be that everybody just drives when they're 16?
I don't want people in New Jersey driving.
You don't want people in New Jersey driving? Okay, that's fair. New Jersey. Do people maybe in like places where there are farms and stuff, like Wyoming or Montana, maybe need to drive a little bit earlier? Okay, so that's one of the justifications, right? But could the states just say, 8-year-olds can drive? Yes? No, they couldn't. Here's why. The federal government sets minimum standards, right? What the federal government does is it sets a minimum standard and says, you have to meet this basic thing. All right, so the best example of this, in order to get your highway money, and does the state like highway money? Yes, very much so, right? Because without the highway money, they can't build it, right? So, when my parents were your age, when my parents were your age, And so different states had different drinking ages. Blows your mind, right? So, is that the case? That's not the case now. The federal government decides the drinking age, right? How do they enforce that? Well, no, the states have to enforce that part. How does the federal government tell the states that they have to set the drinking age at 21? Right, they don't give the states highway money unless their drinking age is fixed, right? And so that's pretty much that was kind of a landmark decision. I think South Dakota was the last state to hold out and not take the federal highway funding, but they sued but they lost because the Supreme Court was like, yeah, maybe it would be okay. Yeah, there's a bunch of 17-year-olds drinking and driving and stuff, right? Well, I apologize for this.
How many of you were just totally impressed by Sarah's powering through the technical difficulties?
All right.
There we go.
Oh. Yeah, I just did this with the states. My personal. All right. So here's a visual demonstration of what I was just talking about. This is the states covered by Easy Pass, and this is Texas Tag all by itself, totally alone. Okay, so when the U.S. began to be a country, did the states have, we kind of covered this a little bit, the states had more control or less control? More. Right, during the Revolutionary War, did all the states agree on what should happen? No. What are some disagreements? Slavery, yeah. Currency, all that. So, Benjamin Franklin wrote this, drew this cartoon. Join or die, right? In New Jersey, even New Jersey had to join for the snake to be whole, right? Where are my New Jersey people, right? Yeah. Okay? And so what Franklin's trying to say here is that each of the states can't act as autonomous agents, right? So.
Sounds not gonna work.
Sounds not going to work. Great. Okay. Let's go to this. All right. So the states sometimes get upset when the federal government tells them what to do. What's a pretty big historical instance of this? Yeah. The Civil War, right? What did the states not like? No, well, they like slavery. Yeah. They wanted to be able to nullify federal laws, right? Nullification. And so they seceded and fought a war over federalism. Okay? The federal government won that war, right? But people still think that the state should have rights. Has anyone ever heard of the Federalist Society? No? Okay. Well, it's kind of like the Tea Party before the Tea Party was cool, I would say. The Federalist Society believes that the federal government should be less and less control in order to give us more freedom, right? The main reason is that local control tends to be a little less, what was it, the state oppresses people over here in the K-Lab, is that right? The state is less oppressive. This is where hippies in the K-Lab and the Tea Party come together and agree with each other, right? So the Federalist Society, you can read the Federalism just out of a pen. For those live tweeting this lecture, great news, we already covered this. Healthcare, Supreme Court. Okay? This is pretty much the biggest decision on federalism, I would say, in the last 5 years, and it could be one of the more important federalism decisions of the court, like we just talked about. The thing that matters here is that the court said, essentially, I think, that the federal government was allowed to set those standards, right? Even when it had to do with things that people had to do, right? So the mandate forces people to do stuff, right, as a tax. And the federal government has the authority to tell the states to do that, even though the states didn't want them to, right? So this is my 1014 update. The individual mandate is constitutional. The SCOTUS blog says the U.S. Supreme Court has just ruled that the individual mandate is constitutional, a decision that it's believed means the entire law by the President Obama survives. That's kind of crazy, right? John G. Roberts here, as Josh talked about, is a swing vote. He's a conservative. Okay, here's the SCOTUS blog's take. Sorry about this typewriter effect. It's even cooler. Okay, so Ginsburg said that she would uphold it under just the Commerce Clause. But the decision is a little narrower than that because Roberts doesn't agree with that Commerce Clause interpretation. He says something about a tax. We'll figure out more about it later. But what this does mean is the power to regulate and a balance. If you think of how this shifts back and forth, the pendulum has shifted back towards the federal government. What would we typically call that? Uniqueness? Did someone say? Yeah, I heard someone say uniqueness. Right? So, the federal government is gaining more control now, right? And the Federalists are losing. As Kimberly Bolt, or the Twitter, @Federalist2now. I like this one. Speaker Boehner, you in the House better repeal Obamacare. It will destroy our economy. Okay. And this one, unbelievable. Right? So the Federalists are all, yeah. I took this picture this morning. When I got up to crack of 8:30 to make sure that I was ready to get this Obamacare part into the lecture, right? Because it happened right beforehand. So I was following some tweets. So the Federalists are losing now. The federal government is winning. Who do you think, okay, so in terms of the Federalism dissent, how does that interact with the story? Who heard the Federalism dissent last night? In the front, can you explain it? Yeah?
The federalism is that federalism right now. When transportation is a key issue that will shift federal government toward federal government power and federal government toward power over a lot of another emerging country.
Right.
The United States, urging the government power.
Okay, so let's start at the uniqueness level. Power is shifting to the states now. What does this do? What? It takes out the uniqueness, right? I would say so. Especially because a lot of people think that this ruling will have broader implications. If it had been overturned, right, and it said the federal government couldn't do this, a lot of things related to state minimum standards could have been under question, right? Especially even in terms of transportation, right? So, I have another question. So, what was the impact part?
When other countries copy our very high sense of government form, the government are often very aggressive.
Right. Okay. So, other countries the story that just said other countries follows what's going on in the United States, and then they're going to see the plan, which has the federal government build some roads or high-speed rail, and then they're going to be like, oh, they are shifting to the states. We have to shift to the states now too. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make much sense. What do you think that other countries are probably going to pay a little more attention to? Our economy, yeah. Over in the hat? No. Okay, do you think that other countries pay a little more attention to this, maybe? The healthcare ruling? Than, I don't know, a decision to build a port? Right?
Okay.
Okay, so this argument implicates not only the link, but also the impact or internal links to the dissad, right? There's been a huge, major, biggest decision in favor of the federal government, right? So this helps the act, I think, I would say. Move on. All right, it's state capital trivia time. I'd say our favorite part of the lecture. What are the 5 state capitals that begin with A? All right.
Albany.
Albany is one. Austin. Anchorage. Oh yeah, no, Anchorage. Cleveland. Annapolis. That's 3. We already said Albany. Augusta. I think that's right.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, in Atlanta? No. Oh, let's figure it out. I should answer here. Albany. Annapolis. Atlanta. I said Atlanta. Oh, you said Atlanta. All right. All right. So we had a good question aloud the other day. And that kind of goes back to the question. Oh, question here?
Aren't Augusta and Atlanta both
There is an Augusta, Georgia, though. Good catch. Okay, so I believe that David Galloway, where is David, asked me a question about, can federalism have pay impacts, right? Did you ask that? To like a state pay, which is something we would have discussed before. But does federalism itself have ethical implications? Or rights implications? Yes. All right, so I'm going to start. Oh, I can't play any videos. All right, so we're going to start with Strom Thurmond. Yeah, it's not going to be loud enough.
He seems angry.
It's okay. He is angry. What he's saying is, I am tired of the federal government taking control of the states. Why is Strom Thurmond angry? He's from South Carolina. Yeah. He hated the Civil Rights Act. Why? Okay, one at a time. Obama t-shirt. Because it gave too much power to the federal government. Like what? Like what power in particular? All right, I'm just going to use this as a picture of Governor George Wallace. Has anyone ever heard of Governor George Wallace? Okay, so what he's going to say in this clip is segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. Okay? This was a pretty bold statement in light of the fact the federal government said, hey, don't be segregated. And then George Wallace was like, and Strom Thurmond was, strongly on his side, was like, no, we want to keep our segregation. All right? So what happened? He got shot. He did get shot, but not because of this. Someone other than Obama. Yeah.
I believe he tried to block the students being able to school. Federal government said we can stop these dreams. This is different.
That's exactly right. Oh yeah. Go. I went the third row, fourth row. high school, or this may be at the University of Arkansas, but it's in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. Yeah? Yeah, no, they send the military in. Look at this. They had to send the National Guard in. Think about this. What if the federal government had to send the military to your school to force your principal to do something?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, when we talk about states' rights, 50 years ago, if you said states' rights, what would that mean? The states have rights, yes, good, very good. No civil rights, exactly. States' rights was a code word for saying we want segregation. We don't want to enforce civil rights, right? Does this still matter? Yes, of course it still matters, right? The states, when they get to make decisions, sometimes do crazy things, right? Like, let's skip repairing for now. I mean, because that's just a whole different thing. That could be like another hour, okay? But, so for instance, do all states allow gay marriage? No. Do some states ban it? Yes. Do some states allow it? Yes. Right, okay, so states' rights could be seen as having to do with gay rights, right? Right, but the federal government might want to try to preempt that with the Domestic Defense of Marriage Act, right? Or creating a federal constitutional amendment that bans it, right? How about this? The states, okay, Oklahoma recently passed a law that banned Sharia law. Yeah. That's awesome, because that was a big risk for them. So, states can still do things on their own, autonomously, that are kind of maybe a little crazy. The federal government might have to step in. How does it work in debate? Oh yeah, question.
What does Sharia law do? What is that in power?
Sharia law is a form of Islamic law, and so it does a lot of things. What they banned was basically nonsensical. It doesn't really make sense to ban it because it's not something that you can just, that was either like a risk or, something you could actually, yeah. Yeah.
What about Florida and the voting purges? How does that fall under, how does the governor have the right to mandate by
Okay,
the state?
so, yeah, Florida voting is a good question, right? So, the federal government, how does the federal government regulate voting? Electoral college is a part of it. There's a federal election commission, right? And so they set minimum standards, right? So they said, I used to work at the Board of Elections, by the way. It was the worst job of all time. But that's run by the states. But the federal government said, by this year, you're all going to have to not vote on paper anymore, right? You have to get digital voting machines. This made the old ladies at the Board of Elections very angry. Okay, let me tell you, they don't like this in Ohio. Okay. But the important thing, though, is that the federal government, so like in Bush v. Gore, right, could have said, you messed up these election procedures, but they don't actually have to activate that oversight, and that was kind of the question of whether or not the federal government can kind of come in and deal with that. But your question raises a good point, which I think that we should make clear here. There's federalism writ large, but there's lots of little areas of subsets of federalism, right? So that would be a question of, political federalism, right? Yeah.
Just one question about federalism. Is it sort of absolute? It's like states must have X, Y, Z rights, or could there be like partial federalism?
Exactly. There's partial federalisms. There's different types of federalisms. It's a balance. I like to think of it as a balance, right? Which is what makes it a really good uniqueness debate, right? There are lots of different things that make up the control of our lives, right? And so which things go where kind of shifts back and forth. The U.S. is a pretty strong federalist system, okay, comparatively. But the federal government does have control of more and more things in the modern era, right? So it shifted away from the states. So comparatively, yes and no. But there's transportation federalism. Google it. Not right now. Right? Transportation federalism is a thing. Okay? There's education federalism. Right? There's all kinds of other types of federalism, right? In each of those subset areas. The way for the NEG to get back into this uniqueness debate is going to be to say that transportation federalism itself is more important than healthcare federalism. I don't know if that's going to work, right? All right, so how does this work in a debate? So, most of the time, this is what the counterplan would look like. The 50 states and all relevant subnational actors, I think, or territories, maybe you could say. What are relevant subnational actors? What? Provinces? Wait, what provinces? The U.S. has provinces. Territories. We aren't Canada. Come on now. That's just blue. Okay, territories. What kind of territories do we have? Guam, Puerto Rico, District of Columbia. Native lands. Native governments control their own autonomy in a lot of areas. So they would be relevant subnational actors, right? Okay, so they should do the plan. So for instance, we had the plan. Are we all familiar with this plan? All right, so this is what it would be. Would that work?
No.
Why you shouldn't? Why not? Okay, well, oh wait, so wait. Hold up. Does high-speed rail have to link to the rest of the country?
That would be so cool.
That would be awesome. Okay, I think that Hawaii could probably build some high-speed rails around their islands, right? Yeah. Okay, I don't think that the high-speed rail has to go across the Pacific, okay? Do the states build railroads now? Do they build high-speed railroads? Some. California did. Okay. So how is this counterplan different than the plan? Different actor. Okay. So how do you make it compete? Net benefits. What are the net benefits? One at a time. Politics. Why is politics a net benefit? So the counterplan doesn't include the Congress doing something. Right? The plan does. What else is a net benefit? Run. Federalism DA. Why is it a net benefit?
There's no higher revenue involvement.
Right, and the counterplan may even give uniqueness to the DISAD a little bit, although you want to be careful on this one, all right? Because it gives the power to the states, right? What else? Yeah. Elections. Spending. Fiscal discipline, DISADs. Okay, here's what these things have in common. DISADs that are only links to the federal government are net benefits to this counterplan, right? Is this what the state's counterplan in the file we have says? Okay. Enter into interstate compacts, granting regional transportation agencies the ability to enter into an unlimited number of public-private partnerships and remove all necessary restrictions and regulations prohibiting public-private partnerships from the cooperating on the plan. Whoa. Okay. This gets a little more complicated, doesn't it? Okay, let's break it down. What is an interstate compact? I've talked about one today twice already. Anyone think of the example in my lecture of an interstate compact? The tags, exactly. An interstate compact was formed by those states in that picture, right? And they came together and they created a public-private partnership because those roads are owned privately. And they built some toll tags and it all worked together, right? Now, let's think about the logistics of this. Okay, so just using the same example of toll roads. Is the interstate compact between all of the states? Okay, so what's what would be a plausible grouping of states? Yeah.
Possibly, I'd say maybe Gulf Coast area. I group those, and I group
East Coast, I group the West Coast, maybe the Midwest. Yeah. So there's some. Does this mean that the plan gets done the same way every time? I'm sorry, Mr. Affirmative, or Mrs. Affirmative. Counter plan gets to fiat that it gets done the same way every time by every state or every interstate compact. No neck fiat, that's not the response. That's clever. But what I'm saying is that it's pretty unrealistic that they do it all the same way. Why? Because they don't. They just don't do things the same way. Yeah. That's called 50 state fiat, which we have a theory lecture about. Coming in fast. But this is a good argument for the affirmative, right? What kind of argument is this? That the counter plan doesn't do plan the same way. Solvency deficit, right? You can make a solvency deficit argument about the implementation of the plan. The negative is going to try to cheat. They're going to try to cheat and be evil, be terrorists, right? What they're going to say is, no, fiat says that. No. Don't let it happen. Yeah. Right. It's sort of a double bind argument. I think you could say it like this. You could say, look, if normal means of the counter plan would be that the states would do it all differently, or these compacts would do it all differently, which means that that wouldn't solve the national high-speed rail thing, right? But they're going to fiat through that. That's the cheating part, right? Because when people talk about the state governments doing stuff, they don't anticipate that they would all do it exactly the same way, right? All right, so what are these public-private partnerships? I want CJ to answer. CJ, what are public-private partnerships? Okay, so the states work together to build roads in a public-private partnership, like it sounds, right? But the problem is, a lot of states block or have laws against public-private partnerships. So the counter plan also has to remove all those laws. That's what the second part of the counter plan is doing. Sounds awesome, right? How often do you think the states get together and are like, hey, we want to change all of our laws this way? Actually,
every third Wednesday.
kind of. Uniform state action is a real thing. This is a video, which we're not going to watch, but, well, because we don't have audio, it's a really awesome video. Here, I can play it and I'll show you. You get the video effect. It's okay. You don't really need to see. This is a very smancy conference held by the National Council of State Legislatures, building strong states. Oh, look, states should work together all the time. Oh, look, states kind of plan's not cheating. Oh, yeah. Oh, good. No, it's okay. Oh, look, I think that maybe the state should be transportation policy. Oh, yeah. Federal block grants are great. Okay. So, the National Council of State Legislatures actually tries to get the states to write their laws alike. The National Council of State Legislatures. And they hold a conference, and they're actually a pretty big lobbying group in Washington. And they have lots of money. And what they do is they try to do things like the state's counterplan. Now, do you think all 50 states always listen to what they want? But they do write model legislation that the states do implement sometimes. This is about to happen in Chicago. If you're in Chicago, you should know this. It'll be boring. Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of take away the purpose of federalism? If all 50 states work together, that's pretty much a national government anyway. So it seems like you're pretty much doing what the national government would do, just saying, oh, it's okay, it's the same thing.
Don't think about that. No, yes. That's true. It would be like replacing the federal government. What they more want to do is create the ability for the states to take more autonomous actions, right? But they also want to create interstate compacts, like in certain regions. So there's like differing levels of control there, right? But oftentimes, the negative will get out of the fiat problem by having the National Council of State Legislatures or some other, the National Board of Governors or something like that, work together to write the legislation so it would actually be all 50 states acting at once. There's also the National Council for Public-Private Partnerships, which does the same thing. They write model legislation. And there's a couple other of these. This is Obama with the National Council of State Legislatures. It's on their Facebook page. I thought it was pretty cool. All right.